I want to move on now to a whole new kind of experience that started, as things so often do, with a phone call from a member of the church who worked out at Bay Pines Hospital. And she called and said, Harold, I've got a friend who works out here with me. And he works on the gay straight hotline in Pinellas County. This was in 1985. And he's saying that they're starting to get lots of calls from adolescents, and they don't know what to do because the Metropolitan Community Church here is so afraid of being accused of trying to recruit young people that they can't help us. And she said, do you think Good Sam could help? I said, well, look, I'll take it to the mission committee and see what they say, and then the session. And the mission committee said, well, we don't know what we can do, but we think that these young people who are asking for help need somebody to respond. So let's find out what's going on. They took that recommendation to the session, it was approved, and we started a research project. We discovered that 3 out of 10 gay youth were committing suicide, and it just shocked the pants off of us. We discovered some other things too, how many were evicted from their homes when they were discovered to be gay, and a whole rafter of unpleasant things. Anyway, so we went back to the session and they said, okay, let's put together a letter and send it to every mainline church in the county explaining this problem that has been brought to us and our desire to respond to it, but we don't know how yet. And we'd like to invite you to come to a meeting at our church on such and such a time and place. And we understand this will stir up anxieties in the community. And our experience is the more people who join together, the better we're able to hold off and deal with community anxiety. So please come to the meeting. We sent 252 letters. Not one response was positive. We did get 2 negative responses, both of which said in so many words, you're going straight to hell. The God's going to get you. So we took this back to the session and they said, well, let's contact the social agencies. They can help us. And in the meantime, I had called a couple of our more progressive Presbyterian pastors. Well, one was Lutheran also. And they both said, Harold, I was ashamed that we couldn't respond, but our leader said it's too hot to handle. And we just can't afford to split the congregation over something like this. So when I called the social service agencies, I sort of got the same answer. It's too politically hot to handle. And but one agency that I was very close to, because I had been the chair of the board there for a while, the Family Service Centers, a primary counseling agency in the county, said Wes Unseld was the director, Wes said, Harold, I don't think we can do it, but the sexual counseling center that you encouraged us to set up when you were on the board could free up a counselor to work with these young people as long as you don't meet here. Because they depended on public money for a lot of what they did. So I said, thank you, Wes, at least it's good to have something to go with. So I went back to the church again, and they were sorely disappointed, but they finally said, okay, if nobody else will do it, we will. But we don't know what we're doing. So if we're going to do this, number one, you call back family centers and tell them we'd like to have the counselor involved with us. Number two, we want you to be involved because we trust you. And number three, we're going to have to set up a board to administer this program that includes gay and lesbians who are in the mental health professions. And if we can do that, then let's move ahead. So we put out the word, and several people came in to interview to be counselors, and we were concerned about several of them. We first set up the board and got several people from the community to serve on the board, and they were to report to the session once a year or more often if need be, or on call if the session asked. So the board was set up, and they put out the word and did interviews, and they weren't happy with any of the ones who interviewed. So it ended up being myself and the counselor from the Family Service Center. Okay, so with that, we started a group which came to be known. They chose a name for themselves and started meeting on Sunday nights. We chose that purposely so kids could come without having to come out to their parents. Just tell them they're going to a youth group at the church, and which was not untrue. Anyway, the first night, Marty and I, Newbold is her name, Marty Newbold, the counselor, and I waited and nobody showed up. We'd put the word out through various sources in the community, especially through the board members. But she said, Marty said, let's take our folding chairs outside and sit under the tree by the parking lot. And sure enough, there were these cars going around several times. And pretty soon, one of them pulled into our parking lot and parked. And slowly, the kids, several of them, 4 or 5, got out of this car. And then another car, and then another. And so we had 2-hour meetings. And the first meeting, after we got going, was around a specific topic that would be educational and helpful. And it covered all sorts of things. And the second hour was a free-flowing sharing where they could listen and advise each other about how to handle different problems. And it went really well, and Marty had lots of good contacts and resources So we got acquainted with some really important leaders in the gay lesbian community through those activities. And the youth group just grew and grew and grew. Ended up, we were having 30 people at these Sunday night meetings, and we went from twice a month to every Sunday night. And we eventually, we even moved over to a larger room. So the need was so obvious, and we were so touched by these kids and what they'd been through. The ones who'd been thrown out of their homes. I know we had a kid in the first couple of meetings who was sleeping on the floor of a restaurant where he worked because he'd been evicted from his home when his parents found out he was gay. And I just, so sad, so sad. After a while, and working with these gay lesbian mental health and workers on our board, we suddenly realized that it wasn't enough to welcome these gay young people. We needed, for our own health, to welcome gay lesbian adults as well. And so after a study period, the session voted in 1993 to become what's known as a more light, open, affirming congregation. And More Light is a Presbyterian organization working to get the church to approve gay lesbian members in marriages, and Open Affirming is the same thing in the UCC. So, the session said, we've approved this, but we think this is so important that we take it to a congregational vote also. And but let's prepare a series of talks by members of the congregation and worship in preparation for that annual meeting. And Virginia Baxter preached one Sunday about a gay family that was very important to her. And she'd gotten to know them in her volunteer work at the hospital. One of the members of the family was head of the operating room nurses. and Virginia worked with her for several years. Another was Jean Johnson, but there were a couple of others. So when we had our annual meeting, there was only one negative vote. And afterwards he stood up and said, I hope you don't misunderstand my negative vote. He said, I'm a New England Congregationalist, and we don't believe in unanimous votes. He had run for mayor of New England, of New Haven, as a socialist, I think, somewhere back along the way. He had helped set up a credit union at our church for ourselves and other UCC members at churches in the community. Anyway, and interestingly, the morning after the vote, one of our strong members came in to see me in the pastor's study, and she said, well, Harold, now that we've taken care of that, I hope we don't have to talk about it anymore. Let's put it back on the closet. So there were some like that, and there were others in the congregation. Well, the next thing down the road was the AIDS crisis and all the hysteria around it. And we were asked if we, Good Samaritan, was asked if we would consider having Wednesday night dinners for AIDS patients, HIV infected people, and their buddies and partners. And AIDS Coalition had a buddy system. And so we took it this session. And that's when one of the members asked, well, we're not going to let them use our restrooms, are we? And I had to bite my tongue. Anyway, we went ahead with the dinners. And from that, we got very involved with HIV/AIDS ministry. And eventually, I became the president of the grassroots AIDS Coalition, Pinellas, it was called. And it was the most stressful experience I've ever had in my life because so many people in the latter stages of AIDS get terribly paranoid. And I've been called every name in the book and accused of just trying to adorn my resume. That's all I was interested in. It just went on and on. And they were so hard on each other, as all of us. That dinner tradition went on for years, and there were folks in the community who would donate the food, who had restaurants, who were gay or lesbian, and had heard that we were having dinners. So they would donate the foods, and then we'd have some kind of program after the dinner part with announcements and whatever. And by the way, with the young people, we brought in counselors to talk about AIDS also from the very beginning. Twice, the Presbyterian Church was struggling with this issue of welcoming gays. And it was well known that we had welcomed them at Good Sam, that we had made a public statement about it. And most people in the presbytery did not want to make have an open conflict over it. So it just kind of what's the word? That they would say, "Oh, we understand. You've got people you got to take care of. We understand your pastoral need." They never understood it as a matter of faith. That I felt like to reject gay people was like rejecting Jesus. Anyway, they just couldn't understand that. But there were some conservative churches in the Presbytery, and twice they brought charges against myself and Good Samaritan Church. And so we had to go through ecclesiastical trials. And we came out okay on both of them, but there were people in our church who were real upset about what right do other churches have to bring charges against us. We don't try to tell them how to run their ministry. We said, well, we're family. And they do have that right. But of course, when it came down, always before there was a trial, there was like an arraignment, and there was an investigative committee that would interview us first. And they would always they would regularly raise the question, well, I understand that you have gay or lesbian officers in your church, elders, deacons. We said, well, that may be. They said, well, you don't know. I said, no. I can't say for a fact because we never asked them in part of the process. Of course, I was fudging, but in a legalistic sort of way, since they were being so damn legalistic. And they say, well, why don't you ask? And I said, well, I didn't know Presbyterians ask potential elders or deacons what their sexual orientation was. I said, if any of you have asked your candidates for elders or deacons, please inform us, because we're not used to doing this. And total silence. There's no way they were going to ask somebody about, Presbyterians are a little stuffy. And there's no way you're going to get into that with somebody else. So there was no way they could really convict us. So we, both times we came out okay. But we had a lot of members whose feelings were pretty upset about another church trying to tell us how to run our ministry.
Were y'all involved in the setting up of the Gay Straight Alliance in the school systems? Were y'all?
Yes.
Okay.
We were. I forgot, we also started a program for parents at PFLAG.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
We started a PFLAG group at the church. That's where I got acquainted with Linda Lerner, who became a very good friend. And she was on the school board. She originally ran a women's center out in Seminole when I first came to the county. I remember referring some women out there for help in getting established. Was a very important group because it gave parents and friends an opportunity to share their hopes and disappointments, can't have any grandchildren, right, etc., with others who were in the same boat. And we set up a number of committees. One of them was advocacy, and that's the committee I served on. And we worked with the school board to get a policy in place that included protections for gay, lesbian, and transgendered. Well, it was originally just gays and lesbians. Later, I think bisexuals and transgenders were added. Yeah, and that was a very interesting experience because there was this homophobe from Tampa. I've forgotten his name now. He was with the Family Association of America. Anyway, he had a big network here in Florida. He was located in Tampa. And when it was put on the agenda for a meeting, he sent out a notice for everybody from his support group, everybody who was opposed to protecting gays and lesbians, to come to the school board meeting. we got wind of that, so we got our people to go early and fill the seats and sign up to speak. And this was a sad commentary about our history. It was one of those special moments during the speaker's time when a number of teachers, counselors, and so forth in the school system got up to speak and said, I'm gay, I'm lesbian. I've never admitted that publicly before, but this is so important now that I've got to speak up. And let me tell you what it feels like not to be protected like others are. And one after another, there must have been 12 to 15 of these folks. So brave, so courageous. But what did the media focus on? This bunch of guys outside, or people outside, who came to protest. Was there anything in the paper about all these brave souls?
Wow.
So sad. And it's what attracts the media. It's like who was the Rosa Parks? It's like nobody noticed Rosa Parks. Well, anyway, we sure noticed them. And it was out of that we had also heard about these gay straight alliances up in Massachusetts. And in Massachusetts, the state had actually hired organizers to put these groups together in school systems around the state. And they had lots of materials they had developed that were available. So when we heard about them, we wrote them. And it was over a group up at Largo that a staff member there had organized to help some gay and lesbian students get together to support each other. And they came and objected to the school staff being involved with such a group. And one of them, as an aside, said, now if those students want to have a group of their own, that's up to them. So that opened up the door for GASA. And our advocacy group started working on that. And at one point we got a grant from Honeywell, and we had a Honeywell exec on our committee. So we hired a student from Eckerd College to try to get these GASA groups organized. And he was a wonderful guy. Unfortunately, he was an alcoholic, and we didn't know it. And so we eventually had to let him go. And it gave us a rough start. But we recouped and got a couple groups going, and it kind of spread from there. And eventually, when PFLAG folded over an internal issue, we formed this support group for the GASA groups and True Expressions, which had moved out of the church. That group is still going. And we had to be very careful that we were not running the groups, but only resourcing them. And so Linda Lerner kept us straight on that so that we didn't step over the line. So now every high school in the county has a GASA group, have for years. And our group still meets, and we support a dance a year. And I think there's a second thing, we support some gathering in the spring. And then we give a scholarship each year to a GASA member. Good Sam does.
Right.
Yeah.